Since the start of the series, not even since the start of the series, since the series was first titled, when we found out that this was going to be about the Four Knights of the Apocalypse, I knew one thing, and that either the series was going to make me happy or upset in one panel. And this is that panel. Like, everyone's probably more hyped about it. It looks really cool. Like, it does look really cool. I like the silhouettes of the characters. I like their weapons too. I really like that really long handled sword. But I'm upset with the naming of the Four Horsemen because I mentioned before the Four Horsemen usually are used by the mistranslation, and then you don't get the correct Four Horsemen. And this one you have death, war, plague, starvation, and man, it's funny because it also lines up with another thing that I've had to constantly from notice about seriously. It's supposed to be it is an order like conquest, war, famine, death. Like they skip over conquest all the time, but what's funny about that one is I've talked about it briefly, at least I think briefly. I haven't even noted like how often they're bringing it up, but like they always end up for some reason screwing over bow users in some way. Like Gray Fullbuster has like used more melee weapons. Like he doesn't use his bows nearly as often as he used to. Yuno is more melee weapons now than using his bows. Uryu Ishida ended up like just becoming less and less relevant every arc as Bleach went on. For some reason, like bow people get screwed over. Why is that important here? Because Conquest used a bow that was like his weapon, you know, Rider of the White Horse. And here, no Conquest. We got Starvation and Plague for some reason. I'm guessing Starvation is supposed to be famine, and Plague is pestilence, unless it's just strict plague. I don't really know. But either way, like the panels themselves look cool, and we've got like a degree of being able to determine who they seem to be. I'm guessing that War is Bond's son just because of the fact that he's got like the spear that looks like at the end it's tied to the spear blade or the spear head and to his staff. And then the one next to him that's Plague, I assume, is Meliodas' son, just like the hairstyle. And the fact that he's got a beard from at least that appearance makes me wonder how long it actually is, because I didn't know if it was. I assumed 16 years was just a notable time period, and not just like a throw number in. It's like, oh, it's been 45 years since, you know, whatever part in the Seven Deadly Sins happened. But I figured the 16 years that Percival was relevant in one of the two, and it was either 16 years since the end of essentially of Seven Deadly Sins, and then 16 years since essentially the last chapter, because there was a time gap going before the second last chapter and the last chapter. In the last chapter, you know, we had Tristan and whatnot. I don't know how old he was at the time, but like I imagine like even if he was like 8, let's say 8 and then 16, so it'd be like this guy is 24, whereas like if it was just 16 and this guy was 16, it'd be really weird, especially if he's got a beard. So I'm guessing it was 16 years from the like last chapter. So however long it was from last chapter or second last chapter to last chapter plus 16, if not more, you know, being the time gap between that and current Seven Deadly Sins, you know, to Four Knights of the Apocalypse time frame. But I'm guessing that's Meliodas' son. I don't really know who the last guy is supposed to be, because at first I thought it was Starvation was going to be Bond's son, Plague Meliodas' son, and then War was going to be Zeldris' son. But the spear, I think, is too on the nose to what we saw in the, you know, anybody who read the one-shot, rather, for Bond's son, Lancelot, and then Plague being Tristan. I don't really know who the last guy's supposed to be, Starvation, just because, like, I don't think anybody's had a weapon similar to that, just looking at it, at least that I can remember in Seven Deadly Sins. Because it has to be, I would assume, either somebody important's kid or just somebody brand new. Like, if it's somebody's offspring, I feel like it has to be somebody of a big deal. Unless maybe, like, Nakaba is going to have, like, reincarnated Escanor or something, which I'd be perfectly fine with, but who knows? That one's a mystery to me. Just because with the spear and then Plague Dude's hair, like that, you know, those are the things that really kind of like made me go, okay, these are the guys. Because I thought Starvation was Bond's son just because of the hair, but I think it, you know, makes way more sense with the spear, and then he looks like he's got a coat similar to what Bond would wear. So I've barely talked about the chapter itself. I was mostly talking about like the four horsemen and then this panel. But you can tell like that was one of the things that just like very intrigued me a lot about the series in multiple aspects of like which four horsemen is it going to use, how are they going to play into things. But like I'm trying to find where that guy's name that Percival's even fighting. I think his name was like uh Geralt or something. It was something super weird. Pergalt. There we go. But he's like fighting Percival. Percival is using his new power, and it turns out like Pergalt wasn't even really fighting seriously. And I have to remember that his armor is black because the first time I did like the coloring for like just like a thumbnail where he was in, I painted it red because I was thinking of Ironside when I was like thinking of this color scheme. Obviously, it's known now to be black. Well, it was known to be black, and literally in the first chapter it was stated to be. But I'm dumb and forgot about it. But he ends up just, shaking off all of these little, these Percival, like, little ghosties, like, these little minions. And there's like, oh, he's not even really using half his power. And Percival just seems a little nervous. Like, even his little, like, specters, like, run back to him and, like, jump onto him. And here comes Pergalt, like, getting ready to do some more stuff. Donnie comes in, uses his levitation technique, and lifts this dude up. And that's really impressive. Because either Pergalt, like, he could just be physically strong, but I felt like he weighs more because the one really big dude couldn't move him at all. But again, that might have just had to do with his physical strength. But while they're having this moment, he just gets annoyed, just, does like a general AoE energy burst just to kind of flex his magic and push him back, get himself free of this technique. And that's when this little fox guy shows up. I'm very curious about the little fox, because we know we've seen that in the like the promotional art when, even in chapter 1 going back, and we've seen it, him running alongside Percival in what I would assume is kind of just like a general presentation of the story. And even finds out that he talks and stuff too. So he's got to have more than just mascot position, like something to do with like where he's going in the story. Maybe he's related just to what was the guy's name that Wild? Maybe he's like Hawks' brother who like died and reincarnated and is now doing this. I don't really know. Either way, I am curious though in just general about what's going on with this fox dude. They get teleported on this cool dragon spine that's like 30 miles away, and they're like talking just about like okay, we gotta figure out what's going on here. And I'm wondering now though, because Donnie ends up going with Percival, and it's like, is this Donnie dude going to end up being part of the story? Like, not just from the standpoint of like he exists and sometimes he's there, but it's like, is he going to participate in like the events moving forward? Which I'm perfectly fine with. Like this guy seems pretty cool. He's got like a pretty fair technique, and maybe he could be like we could see him learning other magics as we're going, because that's something we didn't really see in Seven Deadly Sins. It's like from the more standpoint of like a very low to the ground person. It's because most of the people we ran into were way more powerful, and it'd be cool to see because Percival, though strong and hyped up, having to connect to the, as one of the connecting to and is one of the upcoming Four Into the Apocalypse, but like he just got his magic, so he's gonna obviously have to learn the basics. Like even if he's powerful, he still needs to know like technique based things and understand like certain corners of it that is going to need to have a more experienced understanding of it to kind of get it polished out. You know what I mean? It's like you can only shoot so much just raw energy and hit something so plainly just with brute force before you hit your cap. Like it really just depends. I mean, unless like their power involves that, but you know what I mean? Like nothing really about like though with the style of magic that Percival showed is something that you probably just pick up right off the bat. But while they're talking, he's upset because he wants to fight this guy again. But then they start talking about the Black Knights, who are like a selective group that serve. They say an evil king. That's definitely Arthur. Just looking at it, that's Arthur. And again, I don't know what Arthur's role is and going to be in the story, because obviously the Four Knights of Apocalypse are going to go after him. And we saw at the end of the story that he was like, he was in control of himself. He was being normal. But the thing about Arthur that I theorize, I don't think it's been hinted at really or confirmed in either way, is I don't think he can be good or evil because his power is from chaos. And on top of that, like it's shown in like in the Seven Deadly Sins where the chaos is light and dark. So I think he has to live chaotically. He has to just be this kind of like crazy, maybe warmonger, or he's always looking to expand. He's always looking to kind of just cause more havoc as like wherever his presence goes out in the kingdom. just because I don't think it would make sense if he's powered off of chaos for him to either lean heavily good or bad. I think he has to be, again, in this, like, chaotic, like, neutral kind of thing. Or I guess it'd just be kind of what, like, not chaotic evil or good. I don't even know what to call it. Like, lawful chaotic or chaotic lawful? I don't really know what it would be, but either way, like, he's an interesting setup in the story, because we know Arthur to, like, somewhat, because obviously he was in Seven Deadly Sins, but it's not like we really got as much information as from Arthur as one would expect for somebody like as important as he is. Seems that Nakaba is saving more, like way more of that for the sequel. So I'm hyped for that in general. I think it's going to be really cool just to see him displayed and see him have a bigger role. Because I always liked Arthur. I liked his, the fact he's King Arthur from the Legends and stuff. But it was always like he had a big role that was introduced too early. Like, I feel like if his character was introduced and then occasionally, like they kept him in the back burner, but never had like the moment where he came, had to fight against, like, was it Meliodas, Eldritch, Chandler, Cusack, where it was just like he got benched for most of the last third of the series, and then didn't really do a whole lot up until that, like, whole chaos stuff near the end. And that was kind of like the weird thing with him. It's kind of like the Nashi's character around him. It's like, why does that guy even introduced? Maybe he's going to be more relevant in the sequel. Maybe he's, like, way more powerful and he's actually able to compete. Because it was like, why introduce this cool samurai guy and he caps out at killing, like, red and gray demons? Like, you can't even take, like, lower members of the Ten Commandments. Who knows? Either way, though, after that, we're talking about, like, the Four Knights of the Apocalypse. I obviously went over that much more heavily. The thing, though, that's very cool about Percival's is his is death. Like, his is death, giving, like, the most dark one of, like, the four to the character like Percival. I think is, a very neat twist. I would have guessed his would be war or even plague, like, before I guessed death. But I think the way that, like, Nakaba's depicted it, where it's like, this small, powerful fighter with, like, this cloak way bigger than him, and he's got, like, the hair that looks like horns coming out, shadowed over the eyes with just the small white dots for eyes. I think it looks really cool, and it has more of that, like, terrifying, unknown evil kind of, like, aspect to, like, the design he used in this panel. But the other ones, like I said, I'm interested in seeing them. I really want to know, though, about, like, the guy with the really long sword handle, because as I've mentioned, like, I can gauge, at least to a degree, assuming who these are with Tristan and Lancelot, but that last guy, I don't know. If he's somebody, like, small, like, if he's, like, Gil Thunder or Hendrickson's son who's achieved this level, I'd be so impressed. Just because, like, he would have to be so powerful just to kind of stand up with these guys, because you have who I assume is Tristan, who is the son of, like, the strongest known demon in the Seven Deadly Sins world and a royal goddess clan member. And then you have Bon, who is, like, survived in purgatory and is, married to a higher level fairy who had the kid that is Lancelot. And then whoever this other guy is, I really like this guy's long sword handle, though. And it makes me wonder, like, is it just like a sword, or maybe there's a different shaped weapon, like, beyond what we can see? I don't know. And then the sick energy sword from the Plague Dude, again, assuming that's Tristan, looks really cool. So I am hyped to see how this plays out. I've always liked Nakaba's style. I've always liked the way that he does things, and, like, just obviously, like, his art. I like his story setting and stuff. As long as he doesn't, like, try, like, kind of get in over his head, which I feel like he just set up too much weird stuff in Seven Deadly Sins, and then the fact he didn't deliver on all of them felt really odd of, like, what his initial plans were, if he was gonna even kind of have any of those things. Like, the whole stuff with Mail and then having it cut so short was always really weird to me, but I feel like it's one of those things that would have worked out if he just, like, stretched it way more, or if he set it up differently, or maybe didn't have, like there were a couple of things if he just kind of extracted near the end of Seven Deadly Sins and used that to kind of repurpose other things. Like, if he didn't do anything with the whole original Sinner thing, and then just, like, extended stuff with Male Starosa, I think that would have been so much better. And then, like, switched him with the Demon King. Like taking the Demon King out would have been such a better move near the end. But either way, like, as long as he doesn't try and put up too much stuff where he just kind of, like, jumbles his plot points, he'll be fine. Because, like, early Seven Deadly Sins, solid. Like, so far, Four Knights Apocalypse, solid. Like, he just has to... I don't really know, like, all the points, like, if they really kind of well, like where each of them really kind of like fumbled in some sense. To me, it was always the biggest kind of point was when King just saved Mael, and Mael just kind of like stopped being the way it was, because like Mael Starossa was like my favorite reveal in the series. He was so cool when he was shown his like the way that he was growing and growing and growing as he fought was really badass. His forms and weapons are really cool, and then it just kind of like went away, and I was like, well, why? And then we had like Chandler and Cusack, no diff. We had the original Sinner, no diff. We had the Demon King be a punching bag for 30 chapters. It was really weird when we got to that point. And, like, that's why I've always assumed, like, with the stuff with King and Mael, like, to me, was always, like, the weird catalyst for events to kind of tumble, like, near the end of Seven Sins. Because, like, even the parts that I wasn't a fan of, like, like, for instance, like, Fraudrin getting no diffed by Mael. I wish Meliodas had more of a fight against him, or some of the stuff that, like, Merlin was doing. If you just tweaked some of those, like, couple of those end pieces that I mentioned earlier as, like, my big problems, like, the series would have been so much better following out. And it's one of the reasons that I really liked the fact we were announced a sequel for the series, because I don't like being upset with a series, or, like, having a negative taste in my mouth about a series. It makes the end of the Seven Sins way more bearable, knowing it's not the end of the series. It's just the end of that part, and then like things are continuing onward in this world with like with the chaos stuff and the Four Nights Apocalypse, and it just makes it like it makes the whole setup with the Demon King just feel way more. It doesn't feel as much of like a heavier arc on the series, because the world, even though if it was like near the end of Seven Deadly Sins' storyline, it's not the end for like all the tales that exist within the story universe that like is continuing here. And I don't really know what we would call it anymore. It's kind of just like how, like maybe if you want to call it like the Nakaba world or Nakaba verse or something, or just kind of like Britannia. I don't really know. Either way, I'm happy to see that like so far the series has been pretty fun, and I like where it's going. I really enjoy when they extend, like when they're able to continue out a story world without it feeling dragged out or like losing the spirit of like the previous story. Because that's always like the worst, if it just becomes like a soulless continuation. And that's one of the reasons I like this so far, is because it definitely shows Nakaba's passion for the series, and as well as it does get those early vibes of like when the Seven Deadly Sins was first being hyped. And like these designs already were really cool. And one last thing. I said it when the initial chapter came out, the last chapter, Seven Deadly Sins, and we saw Tristan's design. And I said, because people were like making fun of him because he looks goofy as like a little kid looking Meliodas with the long hair. I said, if his adult form looks cool, anybody who talks shit about his kid form doesn't get a say, and like they don't get to hype this dude up. He's got a cool armor set, he's got a cool sword, and it looks like he's got a beard, so he's probably gonna look a lot cooler. So nobody who like ragged on the kid for having the odd long hair when he's a young boy gets to jump on the whole Lancelot, or it's not Lancelot, Tristan train whenever he shows up and starts doing cool stuff. But anyway, other than that, comment below, thumbs up the video, friend, like button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos. Other than that, I appreciate everybody's already subscribed. Thank y'all for listening. Bye.